I don't know how you guys are feeling about this, but seeing just Twitter and seeing VCs and public market investors and everybody right now talking about like how obvious it was that things were going to crash and how they've luckily been responsible, but most of the other investors have not been responsible. And like this whole thing that's going on right now where everybody is just so unbelievably bearish and like kind of smug almost. It makes you want to just write the opposite piece over and over and over again.
To be clear, this isn't about Twitter specifically. This is on Twitter, VC saying the market's gone down and all that. Yeah.
Everyone is always sort of right in hindsight for sure. The reality is, when it comes to you and I, like our stuff's out there. So you can go back and look at it and read it. And, I wrote a piece in 2015 basically saying anyone who says this is a bubble is stupid. And going through all these sorts of things. And so you could be a guy on Twitter and you could go pull that piece here and say, look, you moron, there's a bubble. And I'm like, what happened between 2015 and 2022? Right? Like that was completely right. I had someone do that to me the other day. They pulled up a 2013 piece on Facebook where I said, Facebook needs to be an app. They need to abandon these platform ambitions. And they're like, oh yeah, look what Apple did to them. I'm like, yeah, look what Apple did to them in 2021. After they made 8 years of astronomical profits. I was completely right?
It is funny too. Like that must annoy you still. And that shocked me, I think, to the extent to which like a random troll on Twitter can annoy me. I don't know if you still feel that kind of 8 years into this journey, but like even that like person with one follower can really just like put a dent in your day.
I've been in the industry at large for 12 years. I've been in venture for 8 now. And at every point, there's always a firm that people point to and say, "Hey, this is crazy," right? Yeah. And it was Andreessen Horowitz back in the 2011, 12, 13, and people forget, but they were made fun of for doing GitHub at the price that they did, right? And doing Slack, and then it was Coatue for a little while, and then Tiger definitely took that mantle. Their product is one that I think resonates with entrepreneurs, right? Obviously, who doesn't want access to this capital and this scale and the efficiency at which they operate, right? And so I think there's a good need for this product of some type in the market. People obviously like that, but they were playing fast with diligence and prices and all of those things. I think the thing that is I imagine will be their saving grace in all of this is that they've made people a lot of money, right? Mm-hmm. And like that 19 billion or going from 35 to 19, there's probably a lot of people that came in at the end of all of this. And those people have only experienced losses, but there also are a lot of people that have made a ton of money being a part of Tiger, right? And so I think they're going to get a little bit more forgiveness than some of these groups over the course of the last 2 years that either started new or only started doing privates, right? And so I imagine Tiger's going to be able to weather this, but I do think that there's probably some other hedge funds that have gotten exposure to privates recently that haven't made people money, and they're going to have a lot of problems, right? And so I think this is something of a canary in the coal mine for honestly a bunch of people to the adjacent of Tiger. When we started doing this podcast, so many people were like mad, and I was like, these things are infinitely scalable, right? Like I'm not stealing anyone's podcast spot, and you know what? Like it might work, it might not, but try, right?
For sure.
And so I guess that's one of my messages. If anyone listens to this and actually wants to start a podcast, I'm happy to help you and figure this out. Cause like, who knows? It's just, you don't have to listen and try this stuff, and maybe it'll work and maybe it won't.
And at the end of the day, the only people that are hating are people that aren't like confident enough in the product that they're putting out to not be worried about it, right? Like Joe Rogan doesn't give a fuck if anyone starts a podcast, because why would he? It's like, if you really believe in yourself and your ideas and like have like a strong level of self-confidence in the stuff that you're putting out, it 100% shouldn't matter. And at the end of the day, my feeling is that like a rising tide lifts all ships. So I think that the more people that you can get interested in this as a format, the better for everybody.
Yeah, the All In guys were pretty funny. They've been very gracious to me. And someone, when we launched, they're like, what is this, just a shitty All In? And one of them responded, or maybe it was Nick, their producer, responded like, yeah, I thought we had the the market cornered for friends joking around and talking about tech stuff. He was like, I thought that was we had that trademarked or something, which I thought was pretty, funny. It's like, who cares, right? It's infinitely scalable. I'm not stealing shelf space from some other product, right?
I think that we've been tricked by COVID and a lot of other things into letting these businesses bloat a lot. And I think it's almost like one of those things where people were actually hiring more so that they could get a larger round, because they could say, hey, listen, look at how big our team is. This is what it costs to run our team. We actually need X much larger of a round because, if we want runway to keep this team and keep growing it, then we need X amount of money. And so I think people are finally being like, actually, what the fuck are all those people doing at your company? That is probably going to be one of the most poignant questions asked of a lot of late stage companies moving forward. In my opinion, is what the fuck are all these people doing here and why are they here? And if you don't have like a very good justifiable reason, then you're going to start to see the forced carnage.
This is not Fortnite. You cannot just like plop down and play. This requires like a serious commitment to it. Not that different from the Wall Street bets. Like I guess you can YOLO, but that's not really playing the game. You like have a strategy and community and kind of like aspect to that. And so I do think that it informs who the target audience is, what is the ultimate product, and kind of how does that play. I think I'm less and less convinced that this is going to be like your general market, your, 50-year-olds are going to be like playing in their free time. Like it is just like a very different vibe and a very different vision in my mind. I might be wrong, and there might be kind of, down market products on coming up that are more approachable, but this financial game, and it is a financial game right now. This is not a entertainment-driven game. This is a financial-driven game. Is such that it is only speaking to a very particular type of customer who this is for. Well, I think there's like 3 levels of the game if we are going to get complicated here, right? Like there's the actual game with the land, which you can call it a metaverse, you can call it a virtual world, you can call it a game, but like it will be a playable ecosystem.
They're working with a game studio to build that out, and we don't know exactly what it's going to be, but they've released a trailer that shows, some cool imagery around it, right? And so we know a game's on the come. That was what the fundraise was about. That's what they've talked about publicly.
Yes. And the land that we just discussed is very much a core part of that product and kind of participation in that ecosystem, right? Then the second layer of game is like just the NFT game and how you think about, how the company thinks about launching the product, how they think about managing their community, how they think about their role in the larger like NFT ecosystem. And then there's the game like outside of that, which is like the NFTs within the world overall and kind of the consumer attention and consumer economy, right? Like Tim Sweeney at Epic has a very different views of like where all of that is going versus some of us, all of us in the Web3 space where we fundamentally believe in kind of the model as deployed by Yuga. But you kind of like, you keep stepping up and stepping out and stepping out. I do think that in many ways, like Yuga has done everything right with the products and delivering value to the holders. And they haven't been so good with a bunch of other things like communication, like some of these drops, etc. Like we have to remember this is a less than a 1-year-old startup. And so it's one of those things where you're just truly drinking from the fire hose and like growing really fast and have a lot of expectations associated with that. At the same time, like I do have the take of, with power and stature comes responsibility, and like what you get away with as a 5-person team just experimenting in the space is very different than like what you can get away with as the dominant player with like hundreds of millions in venture funding, right? And so like you have to deal with those challenges differently. And so I think the game within the game, the aspect there is also like their meta has changed. Like they're no longer this scrappy little startup that gets to experiment and fuck up and like keep going. Like they have to take responsibility and they have to think differently about it going forward.